Everyone is watching for a monster, the horns, the fire, the mark of the beast, a villain so obviously evil that you would spot him across a crowded room and run the other way. But what if that very instinct is the mistake that gets us caught? Archbishop Fulton Sheen gave a warning that still unsettles people today. He said, and I quote, "The Antichrist will not be so called, otherwise he would have no followers." Read that again slowly. The most dangerous figure in human history will not look dangerous at all. He will look like the answer to every problem you have ever had. Over the next few minutes, we are going to trace this from the Old Testament into the letters of the New Testament and straight into what the Catholic Church actually teaches you to watch for right now. Because a counterfeit is only convincing for as long as you are staring in the wrong direction. And most of us are staring in the wrong direction. So here is the real question underneath all of this. If evil arrived wearing a name tag that said evil, who would ever follow it? Nobody. That is the whole problem. We picture temptation as something ugly, something we would obviously reject on sight, but think honestly about how you actually get fooled in ordinary life. You do not fall for the con artist who looks like a criminal. You fall for the one who looks trustworthy, who smiles, who remembers your name, who seems to be completely on your side. Sheen said the deceiver will come disguised as the great humanitarian, talking peace and prosperity and plenty, not as a way to lead you to God, but as ends in themselves. And the stakes here are not small. A deception this good does not merely cost you an argument at dinner. It can quietly reshape what you love and what you worship without you ever noticing the moment the switch was made. If you are interested in deepening your faith, hit like and tell me where you are watching from. Consider subscribing to stay rooted in Catholic truth. Support our videos, team, and tools. Link in the description or scan the QR code on screen. But where does this teaching actually come from? This idea is ancient. Long before anyone ever used the word Antichrist, the pattern was already carved deep into Israel's history. Look at the little horn in the book of Daniel, described in chapters 8 and 11, a ruler who magnifies himself above every power on earth and speaks great boastful words. The first readers knew that shape intimately because they had already lived it under a tyrant named Antiochus. And in the church's traditional reading, the parallel little horn of chapter 7 points beyond Antiochus to the final Antichrist himself. He did not simply attack the faith from the outside with armies. He took the title Epiphanes, meaning God made manifest. He stopped the daily sacrifice in the temple, and he set up what Daniel calls the abomination of desolation in the very place where God was worshipped. Notice the method carefully, because it never changes. The adversary does not abolish worship. He counterfeits it. He places something false in the holy place and then dares you to bow down to it. The Hebrew world even had a name for this hostile power. The word Beliyaal, meaning worthlessness or lawlessness, slowly hardened over time into a title for the great adversary. Worthlessness, dressed up in the robes of authority. That single word is the entire disguise in miniature. And this was never only theory. Around the year 40, the philosopher Philo recorded the Roman Emperor Gaius attempting to install a giant statue of himself inside the Jerusalem temple. A charming, self-declared living God, demanding worship in God's own house. The pattern kept repeating in flesh and blood. St. Paul then takes this ancient shape and points it forward into the future. In 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, he describes a man of lawlessness who takes his seat in the temple of God, proclaiming himself to be God, working with false signs and lying wonders. What Antiochus foreshadowed, Paul says, will one day be fulfilled in a final and far greater deceiver. The church father, Hippolytus, writing in his treatise on Christ and Antichrist, saw exactly the same thing. He warned that the deceiver seeks to liken himself in all things to the Son of God. He appears as a lamb, Hippolytus says, though within he is a wolf. Saint Cyril of Jerusalem, teaching new Christians in his catechetical lectures, added that this figure would seize power not by open cruelty at first, but by pretending to be good, kind, and full of wisdom. This is precisely why the Catechism in paragraph 675 calls the final trial of the Church a religious deception, a pseudo-messianism by which man glorifies himself in the place of God. Not an obvious monster, A counterfeit Messiah with a warm and reasonable face. So what does all of this mean practically for you today? Here is the mechanism, and it is simpler than you might expect. Evil cannot create, it can only imitate. Everything the devil offers is a borrowed, bent copy of something that God first made genuinely good. So the ultimate evil is not the opposite of Christ that looks opposite. It is the parody of Christ that looks almost identical. Think of a counterfeit banknote for a moment. A fake is never scribbled in crayon on green paper. A skilled forgery is a near-perfect copy, and the better it is, the more people it fools and the longer it circulates. That is exactly why Sheen warned about what he called a counterfeit church, a religion without a cross, without a world to come, a faith emptied of sacrifice but still full of comfortable, familiar words. Strip out the cross, quietly keep the vocabulary, and most people will never notice what has gone missing. You can hear that same hollow music playing today in every message that promises you peace and meaning and belonging while gently removing the God who alone can give them. It rarely announces itself as rebellion against God. It usually arrives as an upgrade. Now here is a common misconception worth clearing up directly. Many people assume the word Antichrist is splashed all across the book of Revelation. It is not. The word appears only in the letters of St. John. And there he says something genuinely startling, that already many antichrists have come. The spirit of the counterfeit is not only a future headline waiting to break. It is a present temptation, already at work, already whispering. So how do you possibly guard against a perfect forgery? Bank tellers do not memorize every fake in circulation. They handle the real currency so constantly, every single day, that a counterfeit simply feels wrong the instant it touches their hands. Your defense is the very same. Daily prayer, the real scriptures read slowly, an honest examination of conscience, and above all, the Eucharist, the true sacrifice that the false worship in the temple could only ever mock. In the 4th chapter of his first letter, St. John tells you plainly to test the spirits to see whether they are from God. Where Antiochus placed a counterfeit in the holy place, Christ places himself, his own real body, on the altar of the Mass. Handle the real thing often enough, and the imitation loses its grip on you completely. If this is stirring something in you, the link in the description opens our web app where we go much deeper on the real presence. Now I know what some of you are already thinking. Some of my Protestant brothers and sisters read all of this quite differently, and I want to be fair to them. Several of the early reformers identified Paul's man of lawlessness not with a single future individual at all, but with an institution, and specifically with the office of the papacy. That reading did not come from nowhere. It flows from a serious attempt to make sense of a lawless figure seated in the temple of God. The Catholic response, though, is not anger, but careful distinction. The Church has always firmly resisted naming any single living person or office as the Antichrist, and teachers like St. John Chrysostom, who declined to identify Paul's restrainer with certainty, kept away from that kind of confident labeling. Scripture keeps the final deceiver veiled on purpose, precisely so that we stay watchful and humble rather than accusatory and proud. There is also the older Jewish hope here, and we should treat it with genuine reverence rather than as a stepping stone. Long before Christ, the community at Qumran wrote of a final war against an adversary they named Beliyaal, trusting that, in their own words, the great hand of God shall overcome Beliyaal and all the angels of his dominion. That expectation was not an error to be corrected. It was a real and holy longing that God would one day defeat evil right at its root. Catholics believe the new covenant fulfills that ancient hope rather than cancels it. Some leaders opposed Jesus, yes, but the promise first given to Israel, that God himself would crush the adversary, is exactly what the cross accomplishes for the whole world. So where does all of this finally leave us? It leaves us, and this is the part almost nobody expects, without fear. The pattern is now clear. What Antiochus foreshadowed in the temple, and what Daniel glimpsed in the little horn, points forward to a final counterfeit, and every counterfeit is secretly proof that the real thing exists somewhere. The Antichrist will not be a monster because evil is forced to disguise itself as good simply to win a following. Your task is not to hunt for him in every headline or brand him onto every world leader you dislike. Your task is to know the real Christ so intimately, so personally, that no imitation could ever move you an inch. So pray today, not tomorrow. Return to the sacraments this week. Keep your eyes fixed steadily on the true King. If this helped you, share it with a friend, subscribe, and check out our web app for daily Catholic resources and soul search. The devil's cleverest disguise was never horns and fire. It was a halo he had no right to wear.